Content warning. This story contains disturbing content, including gore and themes of cognitive decline. Listener discretion is advised. My heart will stop in joy. Prologue. All that follows is true.
Establishing link. Connection established.
The automaton's eyes sparked to life, a familiar, comforting shade of bright blue. Fimab. Hadrian, my boy. Is it you? The automaton blinked twice.
Todd?
Yes. Yes, it's me, Hadrian. It's Todd.
You are unharmed.
I don't know where I've been.
My visual processor has been repaired.
Aye. Trajan wiped the budding tears from his eyes. You kept your garden despite your state.
Despite my inability to observe it?
Aye.
Fascinating.
Trajan laughed. Little Hadrian was always curious about how the world worked. Now, Fimab, from the top, refresh our memories.
I shall do my best.
Hadrian's eyes closed, or at least the best they could. When they reopened, the screen split open to reveal two small projectors. Laying on the floor in beams of light were the recordings of the past week's events.
Earliest memory before body was compromised. Monday.
Best to start there, then. Chapter 1. Things that are beautiful and transient. How in the hell do you pronounce that? Eptatron... What? The painting on the wall twitched and writhed in its frame. A new exhibit, only on display for a limited time, titled The Object Hurts the Space. Strange, abstract artworks were hung on the walls, all of them odd and captivating. A green wire on a string gently swung in the wind. An abstract collection of miniature people congregate and show off their clothing and dance in circles. A sad flower pot. The back of a canvas. All painted by the same artist, Ivan Seal. Larry Daly observed the work, miniature cowboy on one shoulder and miniature general on the left. Eptitransistis semestensors descending, Larry sounded out. That isn't a word, Jedediah snarked. What do you think it is? Octavius asked, crossing his legs. In truth, the abstract work couldn't be pinned down as any one thing. An off-white amalgamation of form, freckled with pinks and blues, descending a set of right angles. It almost looked like a sculpture. I see Marie Antoinette, personally, Larry commented. It looks like a brain or something. Jedediah said, one elbow resting on his knee. I see coral and a seashell. Perhaps the shore? Octavius added, his helmet left in his daytime spot. The painting's subject throbbed in a way none of the men could pin down. It seemed to flow like the sea, but pulse as if it were flesh. It's freaking me out, Jedediah complained. I don't like it. The three pondered the new exhibit as the elevator descended. You know, I'm glad it's just paintings this time, Larry admitted. Seems like every other time we get a new temporary exhibit, we get something strange, and it's always chaotic. Yes, like that incident with Rasputin, Octavius reminded Larry. Or the bitch fit that one lady had when this place swapped out Chris's stuff for a new diorama. Jedediah laughed from the other shoulder. They just moved him is all. He ain't gone. Yeah, that was an entire mess. Larry put his fingers to his temples. But you survived him, Jedediah said, giving a pat-pat to Larry's neck. We all did. And here we are, still in one piece, Octavius added. The elevator dinged, opening to the diorama hall's floor. Larry kept his eye on the ground as he moved around miniature people, doing his best not to step on any of them.
Howdy, Mr. Daly,
one of the Westerners called up from near where Larry's foot came down. Hey, sir, Larry replied, trying to maneuver past a catapult. Oh, by Jupiter, Septimius! Trajan! Octavius yelled down to the contraption. Two soldiers in contrasting black and white looked up from the catapult's bucket. Inside rested a redhead, hair tied back with a black headband. About to fire the device was a man with long black locks tied back with a white ribbon. Aye, even up there, Sir Daly. The redhead waved from the bucket, a heavy Welsh accent covering every word he said. Imperator Octavius, we have improved the catapults. The other man called up, his voice thick with the sound of the Gibraltar Strait. Larry could hear the eye roll in Octavius's angry, done-with-this-shit sigh. Ugh. You two had better put all that away in the next 10 minutes, or I swear by Neptune's beard that you two will run laps for the next week. Two scared squeaks, and the catapult scooted away. Oh, come on, Arky, ain't no reason to yell at him. Jedediah laughed. They're just excited about your weaponry. You're not the one who's to clean up that mess. Yeah, it's me, Larry interrupted. Carefully, Jedediah was placed in the west, and Octavius was placed in Rome. I'm heading up to make sure everyone's set. You two got it down here? The two nodded, and watched as Larry tried to hobble his way to the elevator, barely missing a pair of Mayans and a Roman exchanging poetry. Hey, watch it! Sorry, Verge. Larry snipped as he pressed the elevator's up button. Jedediah whistled loud from the edge of the west. Hey, everyone, it's about sunrise. Come on up and get in your exhibits for head count, he called to the room. Friends hugged, lovers kissed, and gamblers gathered their cards as everyone began to climb back into their respective miniature worlds. So, that's my magnum opus, my best work. The poet bragged to his two colleagues. It's quite a bit of Latin, one of them said, flipping through the pages. It'll be a long while before our translation is complete. I can help with the individual phrases here and there, the poet offered before being interrupted. Virgil, Publius Vigilius, Octavius teased from the edge. You're going to be left behind at this rate. Virtual Augustus, Virgil swore under his breath. Tomorrow? The other poets nodded and ran off towards the Chichen Itza diorama, waving as they left. Virgil waved in return as he returned to Rome. Jedediah nodded, counting the last head in the crowd. Everyone was present and accounted for in the West. All the townsfolk and the railroad workers and, of course, the mining team. Everyone except the one with access to dynamite. Anyone seen Javier? Jedediah asked, looking up from the list.
He was fuzzing again, ran off after he woke up,
one of the saloon girls answered, hiking her upper skirt off the ground. He okay? Anyone check on him? Jedediah asked while he put the journal of the head count in his pocket. No reply from the crowd. Hell, y'all are still on about his condition? It's been 60 years. Give it a rest, Jedediah huffed. He ain't right and you know it, one of the rail workers blurts. He's dangerous, a saloon girl adds. That stuff in his paint ain't right, Jed, a member of the mayor's band joins in. Cowards. He balls a fist as he descends the stage. He's one of us. His boots grinding in the sand, he stomped off into the desert, behind the wall. The lights overhead beat down nearly as hard as the sun, if Jedediah remembered what the sun felt like correctly. If it was only a little hotter, he'd find this desert walk nostalgic. Damn it, Javier, you couldn't have lived closer to town? In the middle of his mumbling, he saw something approaching.
Buenas noches, Senor Smith,
a young boy's voice called. From the dusty desert came 5 figures. A young boy holding on tight to his hat as he ran toward Jedediah. A teenager with a sniper rifle on his back and a prosthetic over his left eye. A young girl holding his hand, her tongue out at her brother. And an adult, chest framed by bandoliers of bullets, sombrero keeping the baby on their back shaded from the harsh lights. Petra Charreria, the lead figure of the Petra Herrera's battalion area of the Mexican Revolution diorama, and their children. Jedediah didn't know which way they were presenting tonight, but it's always respectful to defer to a title, he figured. Senor Smith, General Charreria. The young boy gripped onto Jedediah's shin and wouldn't let go.
Senor Smith, you gotta host the rodeo again. I'm big enough to race now, I am.
Jedediah only laughed before ruffling the boy's hat. Mateo, you're still too young, he chuckled. You gotta be at least Armando's age to qualify. The teenager with the rifle adjusted his stance. And we're not letting you bull ride until you can handle a horse.
But Armando...
No buts. A horse is more useful than a bull. The girl clinging to Armando's leg rolled her eyes.
You just don't want Mateo to beat you at bull riding. You're a coward.
Shouted Marisol.
A coward, a coward.
The twins chanted, pointing at Armando. Niños, manners, the general said, calm as the ocean waves. It made the 3 children shut up. The baby on their back wriggled upward to try to see what was happening. So what brings you up here from Mexico, General? Jedediah asked, nudging Mateo off his shin. We came to see Javi, they said, reaching a hand up to soothe the baby. Tonight was a bad night. No wonder he wasn't at head count, Jedediah grumbled. He okay? The general's face contorted. Oh, guess not. They took Mateo's hand and led him off Jedediah. He'll be all right. We kept him out of pain for the night, the general said. He'll like your presence. It'll do him some good. Jedediah nodded. Right. See you around, then. The general nodded. As you were. Turn back. Danger, hazardous material. This place is best shunned. So read the many signs dotting the route to Javier's tent. Under the painting in the west's farthest wall, A divot was carved out for cable management. Within was a hand-dug cave, likely by rats decades ago. In here, among the wires, was a hostile gauntlet to overcome. Shards of broken glass, scissor blades torn from their original homes, landmines, all of them leading to a small tent with a sickening aqua glow. Oh, that sort of night. Jedediah pulled his bandana up over his mouth and kept his eyes low to suss out the landmines. He'd almost got the locations memorized, but practice is key. Knock, knock.
This is not a place of honor,
A gravelly, pained voice replied, bored and rehearsed. No highly esteemed deed is commemorated here, Jedediah replied. Nothing valued is here.
Come in, Jed.
Jedediah heaved when he saw the sight. Laid on his side, atop a matchbox bed, was Javier Peshlakai, the mining team's demolitionist. He was a good guy when he decided to socialize, but he'd been less and less seen since peace was made. Jed could see why. His entire left side, exposed to the open air, was more akin to a cluster of grapes. Purpura throbbed on his skin, threatening to wither off. His breathing was shallow and rattled. His eyes were shut with congealed blood. Radiation sickness. Javier was a uranium doll, a figurine, plastic like the rest, painted with uranium oxide paint. The bright oranges and reds on his clothing had faded to duller hues, graying out parts of his outfit. From time to time, the tablet's magic would bring him back wrong, and he'd relive this. Fatal doses of radiation without ever dying. The pain was something that Jedediah couldn't imagine, and parts of him didn't want to. He lifted his head, the purpura on his face throbbing painfully over his eyelid.
Evening,
Javier managed to say.
I miss head count again.
Jedediah swallowed the rising vomit in his throat. You can miss him as much as you need. You're sick, Peshlakai. Gotta rest.
You know I ain't getting better,
Javier chuckled. I do. You ain't gotta stress yourself.
Appreciate it, Jed.
Javier laid his head back on the pillow.
I'll be good in the morning. We got the statue set?
Yeah, it's set up. A few years back, when the flare-ups were getting more and more common, Rome had sent a gift to help. A bronze mannequin in Javier's day pose. Just throw on his clothes and turn it a smidgen, and no visitors know it's not him. Foolproof. So far.
Thanks. Don't think I can walk.
I'm just glad you're alive.
Oh, shucks.
Javier smiled as best he could.
Gonna make me blush.
Jedediah laughed a bit. Rest up. See, it's sundown, he said as he opened the tent's flap to leave.
Oh, before you go?
Javier's purpura-encased arm pointed to the record player on the other side of the room.
Mind setting up some Sinatra for me?
Jedediah only smiled. Sure. My choice?
I'll be happy either way.
Thumbing through the record box, Jedediah found the Sinatra section. Javier sorted his stuff alphabetically, but not by artist, by album name. Except for Frank. Always, Sinatra's work was sorted together. Jedediah picked one of the records, Songs for Young Lovers, and placed it on the record player. The needle dropped, and the song began to play. Javier laughed a blood-stained laugh.
Oh, this one. Makes me think of Petri, you know.
Jedediah rolled his eyes as he started to leave. Doesn't everything have you? You're head over heels. Javier shrugged his swollen arm.
What can I say? Él es mi estrella.
The song faded away as Jedediah left his friend's tent. Such a strange man filled with strange magic. That was Octavius's first impression of Peshlakai, and the rest of Rome wasn't too different. The whole radiation thing confused the West for a long time, too. Until they got internet access, they too thought he was cursed. Somehow the magic hated him, wanted him dead, and he refused. Jedediah knew better now, and so did the rest. But that idea that he's cursed to forever pulse with ionizing light was hard to unlearn. Easier for some than others. Psst! Jedediah flinched away from the noise. Hey, Aki! Octavius wriggled out from behind a few wires. He donned his helmet again, the fronds squishing between the wires. What in the hell are you doing? Sun's about to... Jedediah was interrupted by Octavius's lips meeting his own. That shock turned to relief quickly as he reciprocated. For a moment, the two men embraced, lips locked. Octavius pulled away first. I'd forgotten to give that to you tonight, he laughed, ruffling Jedediah's hat over his eyes. See you at dusk. And with that, he scooted back behind the wires, back towards Rome. Jedediah stood still for a moment, processing everything. His face felt hot. Pushing his hat back up, his brow cinched as a giddy smile spread across his face. You Roman bastard! He yelled at the wall, Octavius's muffled cackling barely audible. I'll get you for this! Jedediah snorted between laughs as he made his way back across the desert. Chapter 2. Slightly bewildered. The sun set again, the moon's light breathing life into the hallowed halls. Seal's exhibit was brought to life again, abstract flowers blooming in their frames and strange, surreal structures wobbled in oil on canvas. Larry found Attila in the gallery, observing some of the art. A blue and green abstraction of a woman spoke with him, her voice hard to parse. Hey, Attila, Larry asked as he approached the Hun and the painting. The other Huns are looking for you. Civil War dudes want to play football. Attila replied in Hunnic. Despite never speaking the language, Larry got the gist of what he meant. I'm busy. The painted woman continued to speak in her odd, static language, and Attila replied. From his expression, the topic was of interest to him. She let out one last hum of static and slinked off into the barren background. What was all that about? Larry asked, approaching the painting next to Attila, the one he and the miniatures were observing yesterday. Melo Brucco, Attila replied. I didn't take you for a Mel Brooks fan. The string of Hunnic that Attila replied in registered in Larry's brain as, she'd like to see Blazing Saddles before the exhibit leaves. Larry made a mental note to host a movie night before the paintings left. Pulse. 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 The two men watched the painting from last night on the wall. Nights like this were rare. Everyone was mostly calm. Not a whisper of mischief or madness of any kind. The closest thing was the football game downstairs, and that was a controlled chaos. It kept everyone busy, especially the Neanderthals. It was calm enough that a man could go appreciate some artwork, even for a moment. Heart, Attila said, watching the painting. It does kind of move like a heart, doesn't it? Larry asked. Throb. The painting clattered against the wall, its frame wriggling against the wood. Larry stepped back. What in the name of... With a wet splat onto the floor, Epte Transistus Semestrisers descending warped its way out of the frame in a puddle of wet paint. Okay? Attila asked the pulsing mass. He knelt next to it, one hand out before it and the other hovering over its back. It wrapped a throbbing tendril around his hand, and after a moment, its beating ceased. Carefully, he helped it to its feet. It was no larger than the tablet, almost the size of a textbook. Two eyes formed from the paint with sticky squelches. Once, twice, they blinked. Attila, what the hell is that? Larry pointed at the surreal mass of pigment hobbling on strange, right-angled feet. Name? Attila asked the little abstraction. It pointed up at its frame. Epte? It nodded. Epte? The Hun introduced it to the guard. Larry. Great. Spoke too soon last night. Epte wobbled on its right-angled feet towards Larry. The sounds it made against the floor were a mixture of stone clanking and paint splattering. Its eyes looked up at him, reaching a tiny tendril up to him for a handshake. Oh. Larry reached down to shake its hand. Well, hello. At the touch of his hand, a mouth formed on Epte's face. Not where a mouth should be. A bit to the side, on the cheek. Good evening, it spoke with Larry's voice. Might you please tell me where I am, and what's happened to my height? Okay, Larry's brow furrowed. That's just creepy. The Pharaoh rushed upstairs to the gallery, tablet in hand. A new exhibit, a new friend in these old walls. What luck! Guardian of Brooklyn, I have arrived, Akmenra announced as he entered the gallery out of breath. Hey, Larry trailed off a bit. So this is what I called you about. Epte was observing as much as it could, touching the walls and floor. Attila watched the abstraction hobble around on its stone feet. Akmenra squealed at its arrival. Ah! Oh, it's so little! He knelt down to the painting's height to speak to it on equal terms. Why, hello, little one. I am Akmenra, fourth king of... Larry rolled his eyes with a smile. Always the same spiel from him. All the titles and all the regalities, just for the new ones to introduce themselves in the simplest terms possible. Epti shook the pharaoh's hand and another mouth sprouted, this time on the torso, seemingly where a rib would be.
Well met, great pharaoh.
It spoke, now with both Larry and Akman-Ra's voices.
I am but a painting. It is an honor to meet Ra's avatar on Earth.
Akman-Ra's brow rose, and he did a pleased little wiggle to straighten his back. Well, if every exhibit was polite as you, Larry wouldn't need to run himself ragged. Larry snorted. Oh, if only. Epti was led by the guard and the pharaoh into the main hall. Attila stayed behind. He was going to take his entire break, thank you very much. The football game was still going, and shockingly, the Huns were losing. Larry quick-fired introductions as to not interrupt the festivities. And that's Teddy up on the horse, and Sacagawea with him, and over there's Dexter on the dinosaur, that's Rexy. Epti's eyes sparkled at all the commotion. Such movement, such zeal! It would be a great challenge to make such motions with brushstrokes, it thought. And Mason and Dixon, those two lead the mannequins, said, "Whoa!" Larry picked up the painting as an RC car sped through the hall, far too fast to see it in full. "Jed, watch it!" "Jed?" Epti asked. What is a Jed? "Oh," Larry said with anger in his voice. "I'll introduce you." The elevator's door opened to the diorama hall, always busy and buzzing with people. "Fire!" With a thunk of metal, one of the catapults fired. Larry didn't even have a moment to ask what was going on before something landed in his mouth. Something loud, confused, and squirming. He spat Trajan into his hand. "Evening," he greeted the guard, adjusting his headband. "Didn't expect you to be there, Sir Daly." "Trajan, you and Septimius are going to get in trouble again," Larry scolded the Moonifex. "Ah, what have it? We're not going to sit and stew, Sir Daly. We're scientists. We ask, we experiment." "You're idiots." He placed Trajan back on the ground. The Welshman was about to run away back towards the catapults, but stopped. "By the fay, what's that thing?" he yelled, pointing at Epti, who had stepped from the elevator's threshold and was approaching the bench. It turned to look at Trajan, its two mouths speaking at once. "I'm a painting, tiny man." It squatted to speak closer to him. "I'm on display. You may call me Epti if you like." "Oh, hell no!" Jedediah's voice yelled from the west. It had gotten everyone's attention, at least. He pointed at Epti, gloved hand leading the other's lines of sight to the abstract work. "That's the Eptitranser what's-its-nuts from upstairs." "Fascinating." Trajan approached the painting, curious. "Didn't think work could exit their paintings. What a discovery!" Septimius had trotted over next to Trajan, taking note of Epti's stone feet. "Epti, you must tell us, are all paintings capable of such escapes?" "I must admit, I know not," Epti spoke. Its mixture of Akman-Ra's and Larry's voices was odd to hear, nearly enough to make one's stomach turn. I simply fell from my frame." "Intriguing." Septimius held out a hand to shake its. When they touched, another mouth formed on its body, on the sternum above the heart. "Oh, a third!" It spoke, Septimius's voice now adding to the chorus. Septimius gasped, stars in his eyes. "Daron, you must touch it at once! It replicates voices!" He called to Trajan, nearly bouncing with joy. Trajan did as Septimius asked, and a mouth formed on the forehead straight across. "So when I touch someone, I receive their voice." Epti spoke with both inventors' voices in her collection. By now, a small crowd had formed around Epti. Westerners, Romans, Maya, and revolutionaries alike stood around it, observing the abstract work. One little Roman approached from the crowd, toward Septimius and Trajan.
Baba, Tad, delivery.
Hadrian said, his bronze feet causing little metallic echoes to bubble up with each step. "Ah, thank you, Philios." Septimius took the clipboard from Hadrian's hands. "Not exactly science if you don't write it down."
Inquiry. Introduction requested.
Hadrian pointed up at Epti. It cringed at the boy's presence. That is not like the rest of you. It spoke. Those eyes. Hadrian blinked twice, touching his eye screens.
Inquiry. Damage to eyes.
"I don't see anything, love. You're all right," Septimius reassured. "Wait," Larry asked. "Jed, if you're in there, who's driving your car?" "My what?" The toy car whizzed in down the other end of the hall, trailed by laughing. "Oh, Jesus, who took my damn car?" The vehicle came to a stop in front of Epti, and Larry finally noticed the string attached to the end of the car. It was tied to a paper clip, and holding on tight was Javier. He was skidding atop a bottle cap, gripping the paper clip like a water ski. Tied to his back was a baby, who was laughing as much as he was. A woman in blue peeked from the driver's seat. Her bobbed black hair was windswept from her driving. "Hey, Jed, borrowed the car, hope you ain't mind." "Chew, you about gave me a damn heart attack," Jedediah scolded from the saloon. The woman smiled. She got her joyride. Javier, meanwhile, was shrinking into himself as Petra approached him from the crowd, swearing a blue streak in Spanish that Larry couldn't understand, but the revolutionaries absolutely did. "Javier, hija de la madre, vas matar nuestra hija." "Petra, wait, I was just... Javier, ya sabes que no me gusta que haga todas las tortas. Mi vida, Reti just wanted to come with me. Javi, por favor, piensa en Reti. No seas tonto." When Petra shoved Epti aside to get to Javier, another mouth appeared where its belly would be, just beneath the theoretical ribcage. Their scolding continued, Javier avoiding Petra's gaze, and the baby Renata laughing hard at her other parent's angry voice. "Come on, Epti, might as well get you back to your painting," Larry said. "Sun's coming up soon."
His Majesty told me of its danger. Is it true that I shall be doused if I do not return in time?
Epti asked. It now spoke with multiple miniatures' voices, having sprouted multiple mouths. Yep, true as can be.
How dreadful. Kindly take me back, Sir Daly.
Connection lost.